been a golden afternoon, and I remember having the familiar conviction that life was beginning over again with the summer and summer.
So I'm going to go through all of this experimentation. I am going to go through making content because I do get excited about trying all these different digicams. There is a little bit of, self-medication through buying shit. Like it's just a dopamine hit to see a little Canon digicam at the thrift store and be like, I haven't shot with that one yet. Let's check it out. That one's CMOS. This one's CCD. This one has positive film. This one doesn't.
There's definitely something to be said about like you're feeling kind of down on anything about the work.
Yeah.
Or just like making productive work.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, buy something and that'll fix it, which is terrible. That's like absolutely a symptom of
100%.
Yeah. But I get it.
Yeah. So this will all calm down, I think, and it will narrow down into work that I do that doesn't live on my YouTube channel, at least initially. Start building the body of work, and as long as I'm still curious, trying out some of these digicams, I'll put that on the channel. But if I had to think of what that channel is going to end up turning into, I feel like it's going to start distilling down to just a few camera systems, but then be, street photography in downtown Omaha. If I travel to Chicago, like I'm going to be.
Is there a world where that channel? Because I can almost see this happening. Like, you continue to put out the videos, and you continue to get you're going to continue to build an audience. It'll go slow, but it'll go. And like you got to, I don't know, 2 years down the line, you've got 10,000 people.
Yeah,
it's pretty consistent.
Yeah,
but I almost see this world where it continues to evolve, and that becomes like the channel. Like that becomes your I don't know, insert YouTube photographer who's kind of transitioned past the content phase.
Yes, here. Yeah. I think and it's more work. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I could certainly see that happening. I've already had thoughts about, I'm amassing.
Because Matthew O'Brien started out as Midland Pictures.
Right. Yeah.
And then it got to a point where you're like, I got to kind of combine this.
Yes.
This isn't a business thing anymore.
Right. Yeah. So we'll see. I mean, right now I'm just sort of like, there's this connection to photography and doing what I've done for years, but focusing it's getting explored through the mechanism of making content. But I think it will be distilled down even more into, creating work, especially because, and this is a bigger conversation about all this stuff, these books that we've been reading and all that. I want to figure out how to focus more on making work than making content that is part of the greater commerce, construct that is YouTube and all that stuff.
Great transition into, for those of you who haven't, we've got one person listening still. Let
me put a button on the Poland thing, because I feel like we started the Poland thing. I was
going to go back and ask you, what do you think about Poland as a place?
Yeah, so Poland as a place, I didn't have low expectations, but when you think about going to Europe, most of us don't think I'm going to Poland.
I heard Poland has one of like the fastest growing economies in Europe, though.
They do.
In the past 20 years or something.
Absolutely. Yeah, they are definitely on the rise, and there's a lot happening there. You kind of got a sense of that while you're there, if you're aware of that. The big thing for me was just that, Southeast Poland was really beautiful. It's a mountainous area, not like snow-capped mountains. So there's a lot of outdoor activity. The weather was perfect. We're talking like low 70s, dry. There's definitely visually some similarities to areas of Colorado. And so that resonated with me quite a bit. Certainly, these European cities are a whole different vibe than American cities, especially because they're so old. the stuff that survived World War II, the restaurants, camera stores everywhere, little shops, boutiques, coffee shops. It was just a lot to soak up. And
so I heard this rebuttal yesterday, and I thought about you, and you just kind of brought that up.
Yeah.
To the age of average.
Yeah.
In a sense, a rebuttal.
Yep.
Of, there were people 20 years ago that said everything is going to look the same.
Yeah.
In 20 years. And I don't know if this is necessarily a rebuttal or just like this is where we are now. Mm-hmm. But they talked about this idea that you can still travel to different places in the world and they have their unique character.
Yeah. And
so it kind of fights back against that everything looks the same.
Yeah.
So did you feel that way in
I was thinking about that. I'm like, there was an element where, you look at these older buildings and there's certainly different architectural styles that you see, but for the most part, there were a lot of buildings that were very similar, especially on these narrow streets in Bielsko-Biała, and you've got a lot of buildings that are less ornate. There's not a lot of, and it's hard too because some of these cities, especially Krakow, really got hammered in World War II. And some of these buildings were rebuilt based on the original design, so it's newer construction, but it's still embracing whatever the architecture was before it was destroyed.
Early 50s.
Yeah. It's so hard because you're in a new place. There's so much that feels different about where you live that it's hard to see the sameness within it because just looking at it, all of it's different than U.S. cities, especially the cities that aren't like more European inspired, like Boston, the older U.S.
I think about that
East
every
Coast
time
cities.
we're downtown too. Like,
I know
we're gonna go down and shoot tonight, and I'm gonna think about the idea of what are we walking by right now that's so interesting to an outsider that we just don't even register anymore.
Right, you take it for granted and all that. And it was interesting too, speaking to some of the people that worked at Motion VFX and how they all, like, when they think about traveling, they think about coming to the U.S. We all think about coming to Europe.
Yeah.
And so, and that's just human nature. So I didn't spend a ton of time in Krakow because we just basically went back there the day before our last day, stayed the night, and then had a little bit of time the next day to explore before I had to take off and head home. So for the most part, we were out in nature. We were in Bielsko-Biała. There wasn't a ton of time in town because we were mountain biking. We hiked up one of the mountains and stayed at a mountain shelter overnight, which was like it was super cool. Like
so a camp shelter? Like?
No, it's like an old mountain. It's not a home. It's like a 2-story thing. There's a bunch of different rooms that have bunk beds,
kitchen.
So you co-sleep. You don't have a kitchen in the room. The people there have a kitchen in like a main dining area, and they prepare the food for you. The word that I kept thinking of was like a mountain chalet. Like I don't know how else to describe it. It's
like a mountain hostel almost.
Yeah, exactly. So we weren't spending a lot of time in urban areas. Mm-hmm. And really the big takeaway, just to kind of put a button on the whole Poland thing, was I had mentioned to you before we started recording that there's this feeling of before the smartphone, you went to the internet. You were living in real life and you would go to the internet for something and you would spend a little time in the internet and then you would go back to real life. But the bulk of your life is in real life. And now, since the smartphone, I feel like most of my life, especially as a YouTuber, is spent in the internet, and then I leave the internet to go be in real life for a little while. So you get 10 people together that live in the internet. They're making YouTube videos. They're on their phones. They're on their computers. They're jacked in all the time. And then you get us out in the middle of nowhere where we can't really be on our phones. Most of us are from the U.S., so we don't have a ton of – it's not easy access to the internet out there. And we're like on cloud 9, I think, because we're just like not in the internet. And we are in front of these people who are our internet friends that we watch on their YouTube channels. We talk on our Discord server. We don't have like direct face-to-face contact. And there's just like all this excitement about being together, being disconnected from the internet. And all of that alchemy creates this like amazing experience. and you come away with it like, I didn't know that was possible to like have 10 grown men hang out and just talking nonstop like we do here on our podcast, but like with 10 people, and there's no drama, and everybody's excited to talk about everything from what's going on in their personal lives, their careers, content creation, all of that stuff. And it's just this like love fest. It was nuts. Yeah. And so you come away with it just, I mean, Unica.
What you're describing is normal life in 1974.
Yeah, and exactly. And that's what you feel like. You're like, oh, this is like
Tuesday afternoon in 1974.
This is like what life used to be like before you spent your whole time in the internet. And even Unica, who was our contact through Motion VFX, were having a dinner one of our last nights. Nobody's on their phones. And granted, we're all there like to make some content. So there was time where we're filming stuff or we're posting an Instagram story. But we were all in a hurry to get out off the internet because we didn't want to be on it. And she's like in tears about, not in a bad way, but in tears about the sort of the chemistry and the magic of the togetherness and the vibes and the energy, because we're all focusing this positive, excited energy into this central thing in our group. And it just, it was just crazy. And I feel like I've had an approximation of that in us sitting here and having conversations. We feel that. I have it when my family and we unplug from our normal lives and go to Lake Okoboji or go to Colorado, and you're not on your phone, you're not doing a to-do list, you're not doing all this stuff. And you're like, oh shit, like this is nice.
It's so weird because I do feel like that's almost kind of what, like that was a part of the reason that we wanted to start this. Yeah. Which is hard to say, right? Because everybody that listens to this is listening on the internet.
Right.
But
they are feeling an element of hanging out with us.
We would hope. We would hope. But also like building a group, like you said, like a group dynamic, and just show like, hey, this can be bigger. You know, we have the camera set up, but we've talked about it before. We wanted to keep it as simple and just hanging out at a table with a couple of microphones as we can. Like we didn't want to do it the whole like, oh, let me get this magic arm and
and that's also why some of these episodes feel like a little bit of a free-for-all, because we're not like producing a produced show. Hey, Alex, you're going off on the rails here. Like, we got to focus on the topic. Like, we got to deliver that.
Some people are listening to this one. They're like, wish you guys would have done that. But no, for sure. It's very much, we're just trying to be like we would be.
Hanging out in Poland.
Hanging out in Poland. Hanging out at the cigar bar.
At the cigar bar,
We did a podcast.
Do you remember
episode
so how much fun that was, right? Like the three of us hanging out.
So good, yeah.
It's almost like you have to kind of go
4.5 hours.
Yeah,
too,
and a stranger talked to us, and we struck up a conversation with her, and you almost sit there and go, oh yeah, this is normal life.
Yeah.
But we sit here working remotely. We're jacked into the internet. We're whatever, and watching movies. I'm watching YouTube at night. Like we're in the internet so much that I mean, it's nice that when you are actually having like meaningful human interaction, that it's heightened because you're not used to it. I don't like that. That's the case.
We're still learning how to implement the internet. The internet is amazing. The internet needs to stay around forever. Life with the internet is exponentially greater than life without the internet. Like, that's my preamble, right?
Yeah.
But we're still learning how to. I think we were more right in the early 2000s, late 90s than we are now.
Yeah.
Like having that version of it. I love being like, even the new Chat GPT, her essentially is, it's cool. I think it's cool.
I haven't used it yet.
I haven't either. But
the one you showed me, I was like,
well, how, I love to have conversations with my
with your AI.
No, I think all that stuff is really cool. But man, it becomes so like when I'm working at my typewriter, or when I'm developing film, or if I'm just sitting here and I've got the CRTV on, or just sitting in. I told Audrey, like, the secret to happiness in life is good chairs, good tables, good books. Like,
that's great.
It becomes so glaringly apparent, though, that we live in like one of the best times that you could have could be alive.
Yeah.
When you start to kind of recognize, like, we have choice that we can get your information from the internet.
Yeah.
But like, that doesn't have to be,
no,
that's not
right.
oxygen.
Yep.
It is, use it as a, on top of a strong foundation, social foundation, going out, hanging out with people, experiences.
Yeah.
I mean, my best memories from the last couple of months are I was hanging out at, bars around town, or like going
picking
to see
up the
movies
camper
together, or picking up the camper,
Yep.
driving around, like,
or just walking around shooting street and talking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's, and or doing the podcast. It's not, there's nothing that comes up where I'm like, man, the best memory I have from the last, none of it is internet based.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just a complete compliment to what we.
If I did have like really good memories of something internet based, I think it's, for me, it's discovering new topics, or sort of like worlds of thought that I didn't know existed, And I do love going down the rabbit hole of watching some videos or reading articles online or whatever to develop a better map of how things work and how I work within those systems and constructs, a greater awareness, more self-awareness, understanding sort of like the levers of society and civilization that are being pulled, and in finding some of these books that we're starting to read, both together and separately. That stuff is great, but ultimately the best part is taking that stuff and then sitting down with you or Bruce. Bruce just sent me another article, and he wants to grab coffee, and sharing our experiences of consuming that information, of each other's point of view, all of that stuff.
I have to tell you about Audrey and I's new business idea that we've been kicking around.
Oh boy.
Off air.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
You're involved in it. You don't know you are, but you are.
Oh, partner.
We've already signed the paperwork, so no. No, I think it's important to realize that there is a separation between the real world and the online world.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds like obvious, but I think to some people, and me included in this at different times, it's like it becomes less obvious. Like when you're in something and you're in I wouldn't say a rabbit hole, because a rabbit hole is something I think of with a positive, but when you're in a internet cycle, or like you're in a whatever, it's hard to, like, you can waste an entire day.
Oh, 100%.
Just doing nonsense, or like refreshing a page, or like checking between
or
four different
making
websites.
stuff that you're going to put on the internet. That's my thing is this week, and I don't know why it is for me, but like the spring and the fall, when the weather's basically perfect, that's the time I struggle the most. I sit there and I go, it's 72 degrees outside. It's dry. The sun is shining. I want to be out in the real world, even if I'm on my own doing something. It doesn't. It can be taking pictures. It
Just
can
being
be
in public.
You can be reading and sitting and having a coffee.
Yeah,
like being not in the internet. And I'm feeling another desire, like, well, but I really want to make this thing, and it's a video, and I'm going to put it on the internet. So I have to be here in my studio. I have to press record. I have to talk about it. Then I have to edit it together. And I love making that thing, and I love putting it out there, and I love sharing it, because you're in essence having a conversation with the people that are in your online community and all that. But I'm like, what's the cost of this? I get to the end of the day, and I feel like I missed out on a rare thing of perfect weather, access to the real life, to real life. But, again, the oxygen is making stuff, and I need money. I got to make money. I got to pay these bills. I got to dig out.
I had an interesting conversation with a good friend of mine earlier this week. And this person's like just super important in my life. You'll meet him at some point.
Mm-hmm.
But, lifelong musician. He's in his 80s at this point, but one of those guys who just like doesn't really like doesn't really have an age to him.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Just super
Yeah.
positive about everything. Always excited about something. It's taught me pretty much everything I know. I mean, not everything I know, but has definitely given me like the way to look at what it means to live a life committed to just creating things or like doing that kind of thing. And so I was having a conversation with him earlier this week, and he's really good at just like kind of identifying what's going on and being like, hey, we're going to talk about this. And there was, you know, he's the person that I always talk to when I'm like writing a lot.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, but like he's written a couple of like musicals, and you know his that's kind of his area. Lifelong songwriter too, and you know. But I was talking to him, and it got down to like, how's the writing going? And like, there hasn't been a lot of writing lately. And you know, if I were to give an excuse, it'd be like, well, I'm like exploring a couple of things, and like, I don't feel like I've just like put it aside.
Yeah.
Like I'm definitely still like, if anything, I have a clear outlook on what I actually care about now, and I'm like exploring it in a very specific way than I did a year, 2 years go back all the way, you know?
Yeah.
And you and I have had conversations about that. Like, it does seem like there's like a clear, this is what I'm interested in. This has a lot of meat on this bone to chew. Where are we going to approach it from? But, you know, he said this, I was like, oh, I'm worried about money, or like, you know, I'm not worried about money, but like, you know, I'm working, like I'm doing what I do, and like, I got to make money, da, 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 da.
Yeah.
And he was just like, look, you have to determine like what you want to do, what you really want to do.
Yep.
And like, this is a romantic idea, obviously. It's
Sure.
like, well, yeah, but you got to pay rent. Like,
Got to keep the lights
there's
on.
that argument, you know, there's always that argument. But yeah, you know, his way of just kind of cutting through the bullshit was like, look, there's always going to be something else. There's always going to be something that you don't have to, like something that'll give you, there's always going to be an alternative, plan B, whatever. He's like, you have to choose and you know, he's older, and he talks about constantly like regrets and like not having regrets.
If I could do it over again.
Yeah. And you know, he's always like, you're doing this right. He's like, but think about this. And that's a really useful perspective, especially when somebody's literally like, you know, they are older. And he's just like, look, you have to decide. You're only given a limited amount of time here.
Yeah.
And you don't know how much time that is. And when it's over, it's over, for all we know. You know, who knows what, but nobody knows for certain. When it's over, it's over. And he's like, and it probably doesn't mean anything, like whatever, like but whatever you make is what you have. Like, that's what you give the world. That's what you give the next generation. And he's like, you have to decide what you want that to be. And if you want that to be, you know, advertisements or whatever, like that's one thing. And like that's fine. If that's what you love,
or
do
content.
it.
Yeah.
Or if you want to make shoes. You'll be a great shoemaker. I'll support you all the way. Like that's kind of how he phrased it. He's like, but you have something that you want to do.
Yeah.
You're not doing it. And you're making all these excuses, and it's taking time out of that. And he was like, I mean, he's an example of this, but he's like, look, the money, when you're doing what you need to do, the money is there. I don't know how, I don't know why, but he's like, that's been my experience, is when you're doing the right thing, it's there. Might not be like the most comfortable. So I don't know. That was just timely, like having that conversation this week. And I've been thinking about that a lot. We had that conversation on Tuesday. It's funny because too, I've like avoided calling him for like a while because I didn't want to have that conversation.
Right. I don't want I
knew that conversation was
harsh
coming.
Truth, or
you don't want to face the truth. But yeah, that was the conversation, and it's like, oh, okay,
yeah.
And I've been sitting with that a little bit, and you know, it's you know, it's time to look at it. Like, hey, you don't know how long you're going to be here, what you're here for.
Right.
What do you want to do? Like, balls in your court.
Yep.
And you know, I'm happy right now. I'm very content and comfortable, and you know, life's good. But It's like, what do you want to do? Very privileged position to be in. I'm not 100% not denying that, but I just think it's interesting. And you and I talking so much about like content and creating content and and there's a balance too. Cause like you said, you got to pay the bills.
Absolutely.
But it's like,
especially when you start adding external forces that want to box you in more and more to just not avoiding the work, maybe not making work, but making stuff that makes money. You know, you throw in a mortgage, you throw in kids, and it can be car payments.
This is not to say, you need a car, you need a place to live.
Yeah.
You're paying a mortgage, you're paying rent, or you're living, in some magical situation that please tell us how you're doing it.
But you can let those things move you to being a good productive worker versus an artist or someone that is making work, and
you can even, in my case, justify some of the other work as if it's like, and I'm not saying it's not, like there still is merit to that.
Sure.
Being like, oh, well, I approach my job but it's like, it's not the work at the end of the day.
No.
You can approach it with the same level of craft.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can manage to find a balance too, where you feel like you are making progress in both, I don't necessarily see an issue with that. But it is a conversation that I think everybody who's in this particular dilemma needs to have with themselves.
Yeah.
Of like, what... I don't want to say what am I trying to do, because I don't think there's like I'm trying to accomplish this, but it's like what's important to you.
Yep. And
then, hey, you've only got so much time. You want to do it or not, that kind of a thing.
Yeah. And I think for me, and that's part of why photography has become something that I've gravitated toward. And I know I've appropriated a little bit to make more content and, all of that stuff, but I can definitely see that on the times, especially that I've gone out, like I'm shooting photographs of this because I'm going to put together a piece of work. It's not like I'm not going to make a YouTube video out of this. I feel a connection to what the types of things that I really ultimately want to be able to do. And even if I put together a zine of the photos I took of the tornado damage, or I put together a zine of these satellite dishes that I'm just obsessed with right now, and I make 10 copies and nothing happens with them. Like I'm good with that.
Yeah.
Because I had
yours.
I had a vision. I made it. It's out there. It exists in some form, and I can move on to the next thing. Mm-hmm. I certainly get a lot of satisfaction out of making content. And the channel member videos I make are a whole different animal. It's a different vibe. It's a different thing. It's sort of more experimental. I can kind of screw around a little bit more. I can do more of what I want than what's expected of me. But at the end of the day, everything I've done, from the commercial work I've done for the companies I've worked for, the clients I've had, everything has been... I don't know. Everything has been not the work, but I keep thinking that, I got to do that stuff to get to the point where I can make the work.
Yeah. And see what scares me, and and this is a difficult thing to share publicly too.
Yeah.
Because it sounds, this is so goofy to even. I
know.
I'm so vulnerable. Stupid podcasters. This idea though that is, it was a difficult conversation, and like I haven't experienced that in a while, where you're just like, you're right, I have nothing to say.
Yeah.
Yep. Just like somebody's telling you something you don't want to hear.
Yeah.
And they're 100% right, and you have no rebuttal, and you're just like, okay. And I was just sitting there listening, and I'm thinking, and I'm just like, what have you done in the last, what have you done in the last couple of years that you've felt is significant or whatever? And there's like little things, and and this is one of it's in a weird way that's tough to understand. Like this is part of it.
Yeah.
And I was going through my channel the other day and watching like old videos, and just like the studio is part of it.
Yeah.
Like I'll show you after we finish here. Like the first video I shot in here, it's completely empty.
Yeah.
Like this is a work of art to me. But this isn't going to stay. Like this is going to go away at some point, other than what's on camera. And just sitting there and being like, yeah, I haven't really done. I found little like navigations or excuses, and it kind of gets into that idea of like when you feel like you're not doing something, so you buy something.
Yeah.
It's
been there.
Similar, yeah. It's similar. Like the idea of it becomes easy to kind of find a comfort level and just stay at that comfort level.
But I think too, there's an argument that I kind of roll my eyes when I say like a season, but like that you're going through some stuff. You kind of halted video production on your channel. We've talked about some photo projects you've thought of, especially the Tennessee one, where you sort of had it in your mind, but you just didn't pull the trigger on getting it done. We talked the last photo Friday that we did. You were rusty and hadn't. You're like, kind of realized like I haven't done this in a long time. Yeah. I think sometimes you need.
There was some emotional stuff in there too.
Yeah, but I think you need to sometimes go, like you need to, whether you go there purposely or sort of it just happens organically, these extremes, because the pendulum's going to swing back, and the conversation with your friend, our conversations here with this, whatever, the stuff about hauntology, that at least my interpretation was that it kind of connected the dots for the most recent video you posted on your YouTube channel. That stuff's it's gonna give you the momentum or the inspiration or whatever it is to move in another direction from where you were.
And that's what kind of like the one. You try to get like defensive, and in situations like this, you're like, no, I defend myself. But the one thing I will say, is it's not like you're probably a better judge of this than I am. Mm-hmm. I'm the same exact person that I was when the work was the only focus. There was no job. Maybe
before you got hired. Yeah.
Maybe I am. Maybe I'm not. Maybe there is a difference. But
I don't know that you're a different person. I just feel
not that I'm. But like I'm. What do I do whenever I have free time? I'm reading or I'm watching something. Yeah. Like I might not be writing as religiously, but there is still like a constant consumption, and like. Me and you are constantly working through ideas. I'm constantly just like throwing things at the wall.
Yeah.
And yes, there's not like, I'm not sitting down or like, I'm not doing, I don't know, part of it. I just feel like I'm trying to be defensive here, and that's not the purpose, but there is like the goal hasn't changed.
Yeah. And let's not fall in the trap of like labeling you as in the wrong because your output isn't high.
Right. And there's no in the right or in the wrong. It's just this idea of like, is this what you want to be doing? Well, it doesn't appear that you're doing it. I guess that's
I would argue that the absorption element, that maybe your phase that you're in right now, where you're absorbing things, is part of it. Like maybe you're soaking up all of this stuff.
Matt, make me feel better.
But I think we can have those times where we're not feeling a need or a compulsion or an obsession or whatever the feeling is towards making something, because we're going through something where our perspective is shifting. We're gaining new knowledge. We're building more self-awareness. Who am I? What do I want to make? And I feel like, as an observer working on the podcast, you talking about stuff that you've wanted to make, I feel like I've seen signs of everything from still finding your voice to trying to really be self gatekeep what you make so that it fits within I got to be careful because I don't want to use the wrong words, but it fits within you stepping back and looking at what you made and being and liking what you made. I think you have really strong taste. You have really strong demands on yourself to make something that is really good and that you really like. And that's such a fun contrast with me because I'm like what we've talked about. Think it, feel it, make it, send it. Think it, feel it, make it, send it. Like there's less self-editing or less scrutiny that's going on to say, is this the best it can be? Is that the right project for right now? And I think that's okay.
Yeah.
The big thing is as long as you're not like, I want to make this thing, but you're talking yourself out of it for some of the wrong reasons. Like, well, I don't know what people are going to think. If I put that out, are they going to think I'm this? If it's stuff like that is going on, work through it.
Yeah.
But if it's more like, no, this isn't right. Like, this isn't right for me. This is appealing to commerce, or this is appealing to vanity, or this is appealing to the gamification, and you're understanding that, I think it's okay. Yeah.
I don't want to get caught up too much in the
I'm feeling this. This is good.
Yeah. No, I think the conversation, the podcast, I think just getting off of camera's talk was probably, but no, I just think I worry sometimes about removing myself from the practice as much.
Yeah. Right.
And I need to keep that. I mean, because there's just days where I find myself caught up in insignificant work, just doing work, like doing the paid work or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of where I feel like when he was saying that, and I was like, oh man, this is like a little sharp, a little cutty.
Well, it could be.
That's where I was feeling it, is because I was like, I mean, there's days where, I'm just whole day gone, and that's fine. Like sometimes it's fine just to spend a day walking around, whatever, but it's like, I think there's something to be said about working every day.
Yeah, I
working
100%. And I just finished The War of Art, and that to me is, that's really, obviously the thesis of that book is it's about discipline, that it's about the craft, it's about the consistency, it's about not giving in to resistance and sitting down and doing the work. You have to. Yeah, and I can't let I made a YouTube video today, I'm good, right? I mean, that is one of the factors.
I put that stupid ass video up, and I mean, that day was awful. I guess that day wasn't terrible, but 2 days after that was just terrible. When the video started just going crazy.
Yeah, because you texted me about that. You
find one stupid comment that makes it to your Gmail, and there wasn't this again. I'm not it's not like anybody was saying anything bad. It was all very positive.
Yeah.
But it was just the idea of that excitement that it was just a little too self-involved.
Yeah.
A little too, I want people to see this, and this feels good.
Right.
And I literally walked around the neighborhood for an hour.
I know.
And then after that I called my buddy and we talked for 2 hours. I was just hey, I want to but just feeling weird about the whole thing. I don't like how targeted, how, oh man, I spent this time and now look, people like it and I care about that.
Yeah. The validation.
And I do there's a part of me that cares about that.
It's
let's
fun.
not get it twisted. It is a lot of fun.
It is fun to see that. But then
it's also, there's a part of me that's just, feels a little grossed out by it.
I know.
And it was the duality of self kind of just fighting each other. And I'm walking around, and then I come back and I'm like, oh, I'm going to check. Is anybody?
God, isn't that just unavoidable when it comes to making work though? Because granted,
I was reading the other day about Coppola, reading reviews of The Godfather.
Yes. I mean, I've read,
but I hate that.
Lucas and Spielberg go to Hawaii when Raiders of the Lost Ark came out because they just don't want to be in that state, but they're checking the box office. They're seeing what's happening. And I know,
seeing like that sucks.
But even
how do you like in my head, the perfect situation is somebody who just puts their stuff out and then is unaware. For like a year afterwards.
But even
but I don't know if that exists. I don't know if that's
the greatest
a human
photographers
thing.
and painters, when they do a gallery exhibit, they're going around seeing how many red dots are on the painting or whatever the symbol is for this thing sold.
This is sold, yeah.
And when they see a bunch of them, or they see the reviews, or they got an article in the New Yorker or whatever, like, you're going to get excited about that. It's a thrill. It's everything from validation to feeling like you're popular.
Yeah. It's juvenile.
Yes,
it is absolutely. Like, oh, look, I'm popular in high school.
Yeah, and you know, even if the making of the thing all came from a more pure and truthful place, I just don't know how you put something out in the world, and if it does catch on, that you don't get a thrill out of it,
feel pride from it,
and have some sense of validation, some sense of "I told you so," maybe to some of the naysayers, some sense of how it's going to advance your station in the world that you are a part of.
And I think like part of I agree. Like I just don't I don't know if there's a.
I think you know. Did you, when you were seeing it go off, did you start having feelings of like, well, what can I make next to get another one? You know?
No. If anything, I was just like.
I think it.
I've created this toxic association between, and like, look, it's not like this is like this is absolutely a microcosm.
Yeah.
But there is this like. It's like, I didn't make that for you. I made that for me.
Yeah.
And then I want to give it out there because the other part of me is like, well, you have to put it out there for other people to see it.
Yep.
And then it's like the weird pridefulness that comes with that. And then the weird, like, thinking, like, is this going to contaminate the next thing?
Yeah.
It really, it's just like.
Isn't that the beauty of this all, though? Isn't that the beauty of making something and putting it out there? And you have that duality. You have.
Well, and like, yeah, I accept that the duality exists.
Yeah.
But I don't know, in my head, all of my heroes, they put their things out and then I don't look at it.
No.
You know? Like that's the image, that is the Christ-like figurehead in my head of like, you know, Marty puts out, you know, Goodfellas, and then he's just on to the next one.
Yep.
On to the next one. There's no focus. It is the world's now. Go be the world's.
Yeah. I think the beauty of if they are tapping into how much it's resonating, I feel like it's that. They are curious if it's connecting with people and if it's meaning something to people.
Well, and that like, don't get me wrong, that means a lot to me to see like a positive reaction to something.
Yeah.
And
especially your video, which is
no negative reaction to that from what made it to me, which was very cool because it was definitely like a bit of a, you know, I was out on a ledge a little bit with what I was, but I kind of didn't care. Like I was like, if this gets 5 views, it gets 5 views.
Right.
We've been putting out this podcast, and you know, some episodes get like 2 views.
Right.
I mean, some of the clips get like 2 views.
Yeah.
But it's just one, the sense of expectation, 2, the sense of pride.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Maybe it's just like immaturity and being able to deal with these things, or being able to like properly place these, and like.
Yeah.
It just becomes all consuming. Maybe that's just personality type.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say. I just don't.
It's
exhilarating.
You are on a wave, and you are surfing, and the wind is in your face, and it is exhilarating.
I just want you to. I just like wish that you could be like, this happens. It happens to varying degrees. It's going to happen sometimes intensely. It's going to happen sometimes maybe very, very minimally. But I have things to say, I have videos to make, I have photos to take, I have stuff to write, and that's going to be there when I put that shit out there. And I don't want to get less from you because that feeling might happen.
This is what I want AI to do, is I can just ask my ScarJo to be like, hey, put this stuff out.
Yeah.
Like, I think William Eggleston was really onto something when he would just like, he didn't edit his work. He just handed it over to the publisher.
Yeah.
You think he looked through his books? You think he bought his books, or do you think there was actually a layer of detachment there where he just put it out?
I think it probably varied.
That's what I would ask him if I could ever talk to him.
I know,
like, dude, have you bought your books ever? Like, and he's probably on the spectrum a little bit.
Yeah.
And so maybe there is like a bit of a social, I mean, shoot, I'm probably on the spectrum. ask my wife.
Yeah.
Like,
but I have to imagine
but there's, in my mind, the perfect scenario is like hand it off to somebody, and then they can put it out there. Like, that's what I do with podcasts.
Yeah.
You handle all of it.
Right.
Which I'm grateful for, because I know it's not easy. And I'm so grateful, though, because it does take that burden off, and it just frees me from it.
Yeah.
I wish I could do that with my channel, and I wish I could do that with... And I don't know why it's this much of an issue, but I know it sounds ridiculous. Like, I'm aware of how ridiculous it is to complain about this, and it sounds... I don't know. It's probably not a good look. But it just I was hyper aware of it recently, and I think that's why it's top of mind.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to contend with that. I guess it's just something that you just have to do. But it's a very negative. It's like you throw up after a run or something, and you're like, your body's like, oh, you don't.
I think you just keep drilling. I think any fantasy that you have to eradicate that part of your personality is, it's just, I don't know that there's any, that there's any point to it.
Yeah.
Cause I sat there in Poland going, why am I feeling right now that I'm like less popular among all the YouTubers here, amongst us YouTubers?
Yeah.
Like, why am I thinking about that? Like, why do I kind of want some of them to be drawn to me because of some, like, I'm the cool one, or I'm the one that has like an interesting perspective, or, something like that? Why do I care about that stuff? I ask myself those questions sometimes, and I'm like, just clock it. Like, we can sit there and and think that William Eggleston like could give two shits that his photos are at MoMA and they're selling for thousands and thousands of dollars. And maybe that is the case. Maybe he truly is completely detached from that, and he's going to go back.
I'm telling you, my dream scenario is like, off in the woods, complete like.
But if he's
pseudonym, like,
but
Thomas Pynchon, like,
but
nobody knows what he looks like.
We can't. If that's not us, we can't make it that way within us, and we can't let that paralyze the making of the work because we don't like that our hero may not feel that way, but we do.
Yeah.
And for me, I just have to sit there and go, well, how do I make that inform the work? How does that become part of the work? Like, how does me, maybe on a subconscious level in high school, being bummed that I'm not popular, come up when I'm 45 years old at a YouTube retreat going, I kind of feel like I'm sometimes on the outside looking in. Is it like who gives like it's so stupid, but it's there.
If I were to like gain a level of notoriety, like, I think that would also make me extremely uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like, I think maybe that's part of why the situation, I don't know.
I think about that too. I'm like, well, if I like, if my
like,
work,
I don't want to, I don't want a level of like, the money that would come with something like that. Mm-hmm. Nice. But that is absolutely not worth like the trade-off of just being relatively anonymous.
Yeah.
in my mind. I mean, and I think everybody's different on this scale. But yeah, I mean, like for me, it really is. It's just like I want to make, and like yes, I like that people like the thing. Like if I make something, I love the feeling that I like that people like it.
Yeah, that it's resonating.
That's what I really care about.
Yeah,
and that also I hate that I like that.
Yeah,
because I'm like, you be like you're not making work as an external exercise, right?
Yeah.
But then also, yeah, like the notoriety thing, I don't like the idea of, I have no interest in being famous or what. Like I even like a lot of like the fame stuff it's pretty gross to me. Like I've talked to you about stuff like that before, and
yeah.
So I don't know though. Yeah, it's just a weird. See, because it's funny. Yeah, you. I think you're right. Like, just you have to embrace all sides of it.
Yeah.
Like, and that's kind of the conclusion I came to. You know, walking around the neighborhood and things like that. I'm just like, it is what it is. You know, like, try to change it. Think about it. Sure, whatever. But like, all you can do is observe it. It's there.
To me, it's just about. To me, I just map it. I'm like, okay, this is something that is in my brain to care about. Is it ego? Yeah. Is it vanity? Is it a sense of self-importance? Is it wanting to be the center of attention? Is it all of that stuff? And if it is, continuing to map it, so for example, if I had a body of work that went up in front of a gallery or whatever, and they wanted to ask me, why'd you take that photograph? Why'd you do this stuff? I might be like, I want to tell you. I want to give you the answer. I want to sit here and talk about all the nuance and the this and how great I am that I thought of this and composed this and all this stuff. If I have an understanding of that, though, you want to talk about yourself. You want to give them the answers. You want to talk about it in a way that makes them think that you're this special person with all these great ideas and all that stuff. Okay, that's there. Well, I don't know. What do you think about it? What does it make you feel?
Yeah.
And in mapping that, I might love to talk about myself, can inform how I handle those situations. But I can't deny the fact that feeling might be there. Just like you can't deny the fact that you might feel a drug from the bar graph shooting straight
so
up.
Dumb, yeah.
And then being disappointed when it flatlines.
Yeah.
I feel that too.
Yeah.
And I think most of us would.
Yeah.
Are there exceptions and outliers? There always are.
Yeah.
But, and I just sit there and go, look, that's what's there. It's going to inform the work. It's going to be a part of what you do. It's a part of this whole thing. There's some of it that's you. There's some of it that's the system. They want you to, it's there to influence you to give it more.
Trust me, that's part of it.
Feed me.
You do feel a little manipulated.
Mm-hmm.
That's absolutely a part of it.
Yeah.
And, I think part of that is, just me railing against that feeling of being manipulated.
Right.
But
again, the more you map it, the more we read these books, the more we get our handle around it, the easier it is to sort of kind of go, all right, I see it. I get it. I'm at peace with it. I still want to make this thing.
Yeah.
And how do I, through every step of the process of making something and then wanting to exhibit it? I mean, I've thought about this too. I'm like, is just wanting to exhibit your work bullshit?
Yeah.
Like putting an effort to get it into a gallery, how much of an ego stroke is it to take all your photos and take it to some cool space and hang them on the wall and invite people to come see it? Like,
right. It's absolutely right. And like,
come look at my work.
But part of it is like,
but then the other part is
putting that into the world. So then you're open sourcing if the work came from a thoughtful place,
right,
you're open sourcing it to everybody else.
That's
right. Like, okay, here's what I have to say. Now, please, everybody else come in. Like the genius of the crowd can come in, and tell me what it means now.
Yeah,
more. Yeah, explain my work to me.
Right.
That would be, but a lot of it is just commerce.
Yeah,
I want it out there.
Ego.
Yeah.
Popularity,
a lot of people
validation.
Probably like we're in a field of like art especially like writing for sure, photography also pretty high, and filmmaking maybe a little less but at certain levels.
Mm-hmm.
They're very ego driven, they're very pretentious.
Mm-hmm.
People use them as like to become separate.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you're not going to escape that. But the best stuff, and the stuff that I think does kind of stand the test of time is a good metric for this stuff, or it's a good lens for this stuff, and is typically not doing that. But yeah, it's just like, it seems harder to separate those things.
And maybe it's gotten harder
sitting there watching it.
And maybe it's gotten harder with the advance in technology and the presence of the internet and the democratization of all this stuff. It brings out in us a predisposition to doing things for self-serving ends.
Like we're talking about something on such low stakes, right?
Yeah.
Like something that is so low scale, low stakes, low effort considered. What's it like to put out, what's it like to put out Clockwork Orange or something?
Yeah.
Like, what does that feel like? Like, what's it like to put out Zone of Interest and sit there and be like, okay,
But I think too, I sit there and go,
what's it like to put out? Yeah. Like,
what's it like to put out the video that you put out, that this buildup of this feeling and the battle that we all face, the seduction of making content and selling stuff and getting affiliate commissions and enriching ourselves and getting views and getting subscribers and getting monetized and hitting all these milestones. And, you putting out a video that says, is YouTube destroying a generation of artists? Asking this question and then putting out something that starts a conversation. I loved one of the comments was like, if you like seeing stuff like this on the internet, then you need like share this, get this out there. Like, it was like a breath of fresh air for that person who commented.
Yeah.
I shared 2 channels on my Discord that, a vlog. I shared it with you, and then this guy Austin Augie, who's a photographer. And I'm like, even though this is still arguably content, like, I want to see more of this. This is the stuff that is.
That's what I always tell Audrey. Vote with your dollar.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate, but that's the game we play. So you can either choose to play it or not play it.
Yeah.
Vote with your dollar.
But I sit there and go, even though you grapple with these feelings and this mythology that you've created, that your top artists that you really hold in high regard don't give a shit about any of that stuff, and that never affects them. It never even touches their emotion. I don't want the fact that you might feel those things after you put something out in the world to keep you from putting more stuff out in the world.
I think it's like it affects you in the way that like being sore after a workout affects you.
Yeah.
Or like you eat a little too much of one type of food, and it makes you a little sick.
Yeah.
And then you just avoid it subconsciously. Like, you're not quite doing it on purpose. You're not like, I don't want to do this, but it's just like there's more friction involved now on the other side of that consequence being introduced. I'm not saying there's more friction. Like, look, I don't know what, It was a very interesting day with myself.
Yeah.
And like, you were out of the country. That would have been a day where I'm like, hey, you want to grab coffee or something? And I ended up talking to my buddy on the phone for a couple hours, and we just like talked about random stuff.
Yeah.
And
when you sent me the text with the screenshot, I was like, I know you're going through it right now.
Yeah. And like, I'm not going, like when you say I'm going through it, like there are people with like
100%.
This is absolutely a goofy thing, but yeah, it was, it's just one of those days where you're just like, huh. But anyway,
keep checking the time.
That camera just went out.
It did. We lost our wide angle.
Well, this turned into a therapy episode.
Whatever. I like it.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Well,
and that's what this is for.
I think something's like processing right now.
Yeah.
And like I'm working through, and like I'm sure we'll talk more about it tonight and come to some kind of conclusion.
Yeah. The thing that I like most is, like, let's not just like try to control it, try to get a handle on it, try to fix it, try to whatever. It's just be with it.
Yeah.
It's there. Observe it. Breathe. If you have something that is on your plate that you want to make, whether you want to write something, photograph something, make a video, whatever it is, I do think, though, try to stay disciplined in making work and in doing something every day that is that's doing the work.
It had been a golden afternoon, and I remember having the familiar conviction that life was beginning over again with the sunrise.